بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله وكفاه والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى من بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. We reached Fiqh al-Tayammum, or the section of Tayammum, where Sheikh Abdul Bari al-Ashmawi will begin on that. So, Jayyid. تبدأ بسم الله.
باب التيمم. وللتيمم فرائض وسنن وفضائل. فأما فرائضه فأربعة: النية، وهي أن ينوي استتابة الصلاة، لأن التيمم لا يرفع الحدث على المشهور، وتعميم وجهه ويديه إلى كوعيه، والضربة الأولى، والصعيد الطاهر، وهو كل ما صعد على وجه الأرض من تراب أو رمل أو حجارة أو سبخة أو نحو ذلك.
Shukran. Right, so we begin to learn that Tayammum, like all other acts, has sections to it. So there will be fara'id, sunan, and fada'il. So obligations, sunans, which are sunnah, plural of sunnah, and fada'il, virtuous acts. The categories in detail. Fara'id al-Tayammum are four, the obligations, and niyyah. Now, the word tayammama actually linguistically means to intend for something, for tayammum. So the word implicitly, the command implicitly carries the understanding that you have to have an intention. So where for wudu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاغْسِلُوا, wash. Or وَإِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ, when you stand to pray then. And here some of the other madhabs, or specifically perhaps the Hanafi madhab, has questioned about why is intention necessary when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't clearly mentioned it. But even the Hanafiya, when it came to tayammum, said that no, intention is necessary, because the word in itself for tayammum means to intend. Okay, so it means to kind of aim for something, to intend something. So an-niyya, وَهِيَ أَن يَنْوِي إِسْتِبَاحَةَ الصَّلَاةِ. The thing here is, what should a person have as an intention? Okay, so that's a question. Like somebody would say, what should you have as an intention? And the fuqaha have given examples. Like here they're saying that the person should have as an intention that I intend to pray salah, or I intend to make salah permissible. Istibaha is like seeking the permissibility of something. And then he goes on to explain why he's intending that reason. And he's saying, لِأَنَّ التَّيَمُّمَ لَا يَرْفَعُ الْحَدَثَ عَلَى الْمَشْهُورِ. So tayammum in itself does not remove the state of impurity according to this, and according to what is the popularized view. Okay, it doesn't remove, it suspends impurity. There are, by the way, huge differences on that, and we are aware that other people had said that there are certain even perhaps transmissions from Imam Malik, and Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi says that's what Imam Malik perhaps meant by the way he worded it in the Muwatta, that it does actually remove impurities. I don't just mean suspend them, but I mean absolutely remove, yarfa'ul hadath. And that has been the view of some other fuqaha, and we will cover that in detail as we start to go more and more into the other texts. I don't want to, at this stage, I will be just touching up on ikhtilaf and mentioning, highlighting maybe one, two. So there you've got the name of Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi. Also Maziri, Qarafi has kind of hinted similar things. The point is, there is some ikhtilaf. As a personal understanding, I do also personally believe that it does remove the state of impurity. It doesn't just suspend it. That's a personal preference as well. But what the mas'ala is, just to clarify, is that if a person needed to do wudu, or they needed to do ghusl. Now, there could be any reason, whatever the reason for tayammum is. So it could be you're not allowed to use water. It could be that water is inaccessible. It could be that water is accessible, but shortage of time. So Fajr time is about to run out. You've only got 3 minutes left. Let's say you can't go do wudu, or you definitely can't go do ghusl, in this state you could do tayammum. Or if a person was ill and they couldn't use water, or if whatever the many reasons for resorting to tayammum. The situation is that now that a person does do tayammum, so let's say I think, okay, I've only got 3 minutes, so I quickly do tayammum. It's now permissible for me to pray salah. However, once that salah is complete, do I return to my state of impurity? Meaning, has my wudu now broken? That I've used that tayammum for whatever act I wanted to, or do I go, or am I now still in a state of purity? So that is what the mas'ala is. And likewise, it would be even, you may not think it's so much of a big deal for wudu, but for ghusl, for example, it would be perhaps more of a big deal in the sense that, okay, do I still need to go and do ghusl, or am I okay? So that's the difference between the suspended state of impurity and the actual removal of impurity. So you are now, so on the mashhur qawl in most madhabs, that the popular opinion that no, it hasn't removed it, it's only suspended it. So that means when you go and do wudu later on, or you go and do ghusl, whatever. But according to the other opinions, which I did say that some people said is a transmission from Imam Malik as well, that no, it does actually remove it. Okay, so yeah.
So for example, if you need to pray asr, you haven't got water, you make tayammum, and then you get to Maghrib and you come across water. In your view then, because it lifts hadath, you don't need to make wudu again.
Yeah, I mean,
but on the mashhur you would have to make.
You would have to, yeah.
And on your view, would you, if you're junub and you make tayammum,
it'd be the same.
It'd be the same.
It'd be the same. And that's, I'm not saying that's my view as in just my view. There are many fuqaha who have said that, but we will go through details later on as we cover these sections again in more depth. Right, تعميم وجهه ويديه إلى كوعيه. Okay, now this is the obligation. Now that you must encompass the face. So when a person is doing tayammum, that what they would do is they've kind of like let's say that was, so my phone can play the stone for a while. So once you've kind of like touched it, or you've kind of whatever, you would then wipe over the complete face. فَامْسَحُوا بِوُجُوهِكُمْ. Okay, you'd wipe over your face. وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ. Now the thing is then also the hands, and I'll show how we kind of do this, but the Maliki and the Mashhur have said that up to the wrists is the obligation, and beyond the wrist to the elbow is the sunnah, they've said. Although there are other narrations that say up to the elbows is sunnah. Okay, so just to clarify that. Also, you see that what I've kind of done there, as in done that first strike, what he then says, ad-darbatul ula, the first strike. So like touching the, and by the way, what isn't intended here is to remove dirt with you. So what I mean by that, if I've got a stone now and I'm wiping over this stone or rock or whatever, I don't think that would be quite a rock, but let's just say if I was wiping over something, or just the earth or sand or whatever, right? What the intention is not, what the objective is not that I'm trying to take back dirt to put on my face. That is not the objective. If that was the objective, you just rub your face in dirt. I mean, that's not the objective. The objective is just contact. It is a ritual cleansing. It is not an actual cleansing. Obviously, you don't clean with dirt. So it's a ritual act. And the Maliki are very clear about this, that actually doing, like removing the actual, that dust with your fingers is not at all intended. Okay? So a person doesn't need to be trying to do stuff like that.
Do they actually have to return that? There is dust in the really white.
Very, I mean, that's a very good reminder that what you would find in the hadith, actually, that the Prophet ﷺ, when he had done tayammum, he would actually do that, and it's called nafd al-ghubar, or nafd al whatever. It's kind of like just shaking off whatever was on it, and that is the dalil that it wasn't intended to wipe that over your face. Okay, so just to kind of clarify that. But that first strike, by the way, is the obligatory strike. What comes after is the second strike is sunnah. Otherwise, with one strike, you could literally do both. But it's against the sunnah to do so. Okay. Right. As-Sa'id al-Tahir. Sa'id means that which has surfaced to the earth. Okay. Ma sa'ada, whatever has not Sa'ad, not as you know, your name is Sa'ad. But this Sa'ada, whatever, kind of with the Sa'ad, whatever rises and elevates. That's why, hence, in Arabic, what do you call a lift?
Mis'ad.
Mis'ad. Right, so a lift, an elevator is called a Mis'ad. Okay, so the same thing, a Sa'id, what is it? That is what you use. فَتَيَمَّمُوا سَعِيدًا طَيِّبًا. Okay, that you use like pure Sa'id. What Sa'id means, we're just using that as a generic term, umbrella term, to mean anything that is of the earth and has surfaced. Or, what's a better way? As Yahya, what's his name? As Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari said, radiyallahu anhu, or rahimahullah, from the Tabi'een, that the definition, and it's quoted by, I believe it is in the Muwatta that Imam Malik quotes it, مَا حَالَ بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَ الْأَرْضِ, whatever kind of comes between you and the earth. So that's, and why is that definition more interesting? Any ideas? Why is that one more, perhaps more encompassing? I could have used
any surface, isn't it?
Yeah, and if we just say of the earth, what would it eliminate that you think some people may have kind of then discussed? What do you think? For tayammum, guys? Let's see if we don't have major fans of tayammum here.
Oh, dust
Dust, I suppose, but people might argue dust is still of the earth.
synthetic stuff.
No, but synthetic wouldn't really be. Okay, close, although that could be argued it's of the earth, but it's not true. But I mean, like some herbs and stuff people have argued. But also, anything else? What do you think some people have allowed tayammum from?
Crystals or diamonds.
Smoke.
Snow. They've actually allowed it from snow. Now, this is definitely not of the earth. So that, although the question may be, some people may say, what's the obvious question?
Water.
See? But what if you can't use water because of something else?
It's cold.
Or, but I mean, it could be an injury. It could be many other things. So don't go with your first question. Don't give it the look straight away like the what's wrong with these? These fuqaha did think it through slightly. I'm not saying you use snow, but in places where it's just snowing, and that person has to use tayammum. Let's say they has to resort to tayammum. So let's say he's ill or whatever, and so what's he supposed to like dig through snow and find a stone? Or so it could be. So it's a useful type of thing.
To be fair, if you can't put water on it, you can't put soil on it.
No, but you're not going to. That's the whole point.
What are you going to use then?
Because tayammum is only for the face and hands. So your injury could be elsewhere. It could be like on your foot. It could be, even if it's on your face, there's a difference between just wiping, doing masah, where we said, like going like that with your hand, and washing. Could cause infections, could cause many other things. Or even if you've got like an injury on your head or something like this. So there is a distinction. Right, okay, na'am.
Is the issue with snow because it comes from the skies and it's rain? That's the issue. How is it got there?
The issue, many things that some people would say, I mean, by the way, snow isn't necessarily agreed upon, but we will go through the descents, but that's an example. People, obviously, you can imagine why they've got an issue with snow. Some were just raised right here. Some people saying, what on earth is that? That's just water, that's this, that's that. And other people had said, well, saying things like, well, it's not of the earth. That being the key thing, that it's not actually, they didn't see intrinsic to the earth. I heard somewhere that the Hanafiya had an interesting one, that something about what they said something about that of the earth, but they added some conditions like it can't be burnt.
Yeah, I think.
And that's an interesting type of.
In what sense can't be burnt?
Like you can't say. No, like meaning like, obviously, I mean, the Hanafiya things are never comprehensive. I take that back since it's been recorded. We absolutely love the Hanafi madhab. Disclaimer. Right. No, but I mean, what they did is they excluded stuff like trees, herbs, grass, all that type of stuff. Marijuana. No, I'm joking. Right, okay, so...
The excessive price of just using a wall.
So,
People use a wall in a building because the stone is natural.
yeah, but most of these, they would have been like... surprisingly, the ulama don't allow... I don't say surprising, but they don't allow bricks that have been... Because most bricks have been baked, unless the original... Because it must be in a natural state. If it's in an altered state, or like things like painted walls and stuff like this are definitely no. What is, however, like marble is allowed. So if like sometimes people make structures out of, I'm just saying like marble type of things, that would be allowed.
So trees and wood, for example.
Yeah, they wouldn't be allowed.
But it's like
Some ulama will see that, and there'll be some of the Baghdadiyin did allow things like herbs and that, but really, no, not according to the popular. And you can see why people saw it as weird, because it doesn't fit the sa'idan tayyiban type of thing. Okay, na'am. وَهُوَ كُلُّ مَا سَعَدَ عَلَى وَجْهِ الْأَرْضِ. So everything that is surfaced to the earth, min turabin, from soil, or ramalin, or sand, or hijara, or stones, or sabkha. Now,
is there anything about, for example, if I took a rock and I moved it and I put it in my room, for example?
good question. There's that is permissible, and there is some difference. I believe, if I recall correctly, I think Ibn Wahab and Ibn Bukayr had kind of disagreed on that, but we'll come to names later on. But generally that is permissible. The mas'ala comes that what if a person took some soil or took something and put it in a pot and moved it and put it in his room, or put a stone, or put, I mean, if you want to take a rock, fair enough, just for tayammum purposes. Right, you got a rock in your room. But yeah, I mean, that is fine, you can do that. نعم. ثانيا سنن التيمم ثلاثة ترتيب المسح. So the sequence of the wiping. So okay, so the sequence is a sunnah, it's not an obligation. Right. Al-masah min al-ku' ila al-mirfaq. Now this, from the wrist to the, and I'll show you how the Malikiyya sometimes instruct it in a moment, okay? But from the wrist to the elbow is seen as a sunnah, okay? Popularly, there is ikhtilaf on it, but popularly. Tajdid al-darba, that should say athaniya as well, just to clarify that, renewing the second strike, lil yadayn. All right, that you've got a second strike, basically, which goes for the hands, that is a sunnah, not an obligation. Meaning if you did it in one strike, it's still complete, but it's against the sunnah. Okay, does that? And just to clarify there that we are clear, you begin with the face and then the hands, okay? فضائل التيمم ثلاثة. The virtues are three. Tasmiyah. Now, you can say the Malikiyya are like with wudu as well. What have they said regarding tasmiyah? That you should say tasmiyah. Tasmiyah means just saying Bismillah, but how have they generally said to say Bismillah? Any idea?
Bismillah.
That's it. Just like that. Oh, you're doing it, dog. No, but what I mean by that, apart from the obvious, I mean without saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Just Bismillah. Because normally tasmiyah means Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So when people say Bismillah, they usually don't mean just say Bismillah, they mean say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. But generally, the Malikiyya for wudu will just say Bismillah. Although if you said Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, that's fine as well. But they recognize that the sunnah was just to say Bismillah for that, for wudu. Hence also tayammum. Okay? But like I said, if you complete it, it's fine. Al-bada' بمسح ظاهر اليمنى باليسرى. So wiping or beginning by wiping the apparent of the right hand with the left hand إلى المرفق, to the elbow, ثم بالباطن إلى آخر الأصابع, then what is beneath to the tips, to the fingertips, and I'll show you that in a moment. And then third, mashul yusra mithla dhalik. And then thirdly, wiping the left hand in a similar manner. Right, now, wallahu a'lam. So just to show you guys, so you've got, sorry, have you got a stone here? Yeah, one. Then this is it. I'm gonna have tayammum now. People, I hope you're in a higher state of being, so do not. Allah. Okay, so here you are. So you've got your stone. This is for tayammum, not for. Right. Okay. So you wipe over the stone. First strike. Okay. You've wiped over the face. Done. Second strike. Wipe over. Now what you do is, just to show you, you begin with the right hand. Right, you're going to obviously use the left hand, but you're going to begin wiping the right hand first. So you start from on top, and you go over, you reach the elbow, you take your hand under, right, and you bring it back like that, so your hands are kind of touching in the end. So you've kind of like touched the fingertips at the end, and then you do this one in the same way. Take it there, under the elbow, so you kind of keep contact under, like bring it under, and kind of, yeah, like that. And then bring it back like that.
Would you have to take off like your watch and
No. I mean, you wouldn't have to do that for wudu either, but I mean, tayammum, wiping over, is less encompassing. And the object is not, it's a ritual. It's not actually to kind of like, I'm just saying, just in case a person thinks, oh, I missed a bit. There's no such thing as a missed a bit. It's the whole point is you just wipe over. This sequence that they're showing, it is actually demonstrated by Ibn Abi Zayd as well in the Risala, which is, I mean, the Maliki have kind of stuck with this, so it's very, I mean, going right back to the Salaf, okay? But it's not saying that's a must. It's not saying that that is, you know, if a person doesn't do it like, even if a person just went, it's still done, but it's just, this is the sequence that has been demonstrated.
you know how like takhleel is obligatory in wudu.
Yeah.
You don't have to do takhleel of the...
No, because the whole purpose is it's not to encompass. It's not about, wudu is about, takhleel means going in between, like penetrating in between the fingers. For wudu, because the finger gaps, and we explained this last time, they're not really like, it's not really hidden what's between the fingers, hence it needs to be washed. But no, not for this, because the whole purpose is it's not encompassing. It's not like meant to be like getting every like spot, for example. It's not meant to be doing that.
And you don't have to like make darb with the stone. You can just rub.
Yeah, I mean, as opposed to, you mean like a physical strike?
Physical strike. I mean,
Like,
yeah.
like before.
And this is darb.
No, you don't have to do that. Or just the person sitting next to you in his head. Because that was a strike. It's just tayammum, don't worry about it. On the bright side, you've got tayammum. Right, okay, with that we finish Kitab al-Tahara. There are many sections, as some of you may be questioning and may be wondering, which we haven't covered in depth in Kitab al-Tahara. We haven't covered several things. That's because this is an absolute beginner's elementary type of level. We will be repeating all of these things time and time again. Each layer will have more detail. So, and then by the end of it, inshallah, you'll be like mini fuqaha. Okay, so that's how much layers are meant to be added. Okay, so don't sweat it if we haven't covered certain things. That's not a big deal, inshallah. Naam.
باب شروط الصلاة وللصلاة شروط وجوب وشروط صحة فأما شروط وجوبها فخمسة الإسلام والبلوغ والعقل ودخول الوقت وبلوغ دعوة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وأما شروط صحتها فتسعة طهارة الحدث وطهارة الخبث واستقبال القبلة وستر العورة وترك الكلام وترك الأفعال الكثيرة والله أعلم.
Right. These are the obligations or the conditions of Salah. So what you have is, you will have, and different ulama use different names for them, different wordings. Terminology is not a problem, by the way. Whatever somebody uses as terminology, it's all good. Okay, so don't worry too much about terminology. You will have conditions of obligation and conditions of validity. Have they haven't put them both together, have they? No, right, no, they've separated them, because some of the scholars put them together and others tend to separate them, which makes sense really. And the later scholars tend to separate them, and since Sheikh Abdul Bari al-Ashmawi is from the later day scholars, you can see that he's also split them. A condition of obligation will demonstrate that something is obligatory upon you. It does not mean it's not discussing validity. As an example, Salah is not obligatory upon a child, yet it is valid, perfectly valid from a child. So validity and obligation are two different things. Okay, so دعنا نبدأ. Let's begin. شروط وجوب الصلاة. Now, this is going through the conditions of obligation for Salah. So first of all, al-Islam. So Salah is not obligatory unless you're Muslim. That may sound like duh, but it's not that duh sometimes, because people do at times. There is a broader theological debate out there which speaks about khitabul, like halil kuffar mukhatabuna bil furu'. Now that is discussing, are the disbelievers, are they addressed with the type of finite details of the Sharia, or are they just addressed with Iman? So would you say, oh, now Asr is kind of, Dhuhr has been, it's Asr time, so all the kuffar who don't pray Dhuhr, that's another sin added onto them, and now Asr has been, that's another sin added on. Does it work like that? And there is a huge debate, and there is a huge split. It's not, and to be fair, it sounds what many of the Hanafiya have taken, and a reasonable amount of the Malikiya have kind of gone with this as well, in the sense that the kuffar are not mukhatabuna bil furu'. They are not addressed with the furu', they are addressed with the usul. And by usul here, we don't mean usul al-fiqh. What we mean is usul as in aqidah, as in belief. The foundations, not the finite details. So we don't say, oh, how come, this kafir is drinking alcohol, for example, because they're not addressed with the Sharia. They're addressed with belief. So we don't say, the same way somebody doesn't say, why isn't, and you know what, on some things people find this common sense, and other things they don't. So for example, all Muslims will find it common sense that they won't ask, why is this kafir not doing Hajj? Like, I think everybody would agree on that one. They wouldn't think, why is this kafir not doing Hajj for God's sake? Like, it's been like a lifetime. But yet they won't find it clear on other issues, like for example alcohol. They will be enraged at why the person is still drinking alcohol, or on other issues. And what are more interesting of this day and age, maybe it's the only reason I'm mentioning it is because it's such a debate online and stuff like this, issues of sexuality, issues of stuff like this. People, I'm not saying in any way to justify something, but what I am saying is these issues of usul fiqh are sometimes not so obvious when it comes to certain matters, and they're more obvious when it comes to some. So where everybody sees them absolutely clear on matters like Hajj, people don't see them as clearly on other matters.
The irony being the mushrikeen used to go on Hajj until they were forbidden from them last year.
Very well said. Right. So, but that's an interesting point. Jayyid. So al-bulugh, so pubescence. So a person having reached puberty, salah becomes obligatory. So the obligation is not binding until then. Doesn't negate validity though, but Islam does negate validity. So if a person isn't a Muslim, even if they're offering salah, it's invalid. Okay, so, but we'll see that in a moment anyway. Al-aql, reasoning or mental capacity. I'm not sure how, would you is there a better medical term? No?
Capacity.
Just capacity, yeah, like mental capacity in the sense that a person, because this can mean many things. Al-aql can mean, and it will cover, like, for example, person is unconscious. It can also mean that a person has a bout of insanity. It can also mean that a person is intoxicated. It's lost. It can also, so it can cover several things in which a person does not have or has lost his or her mental capacity. Okay. Bulugh da'wat an-Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, I find that one a bit strange. Some of the scholars have put this there, but I kind of find it repetitive of al-Islam, because I can't see that Islam would have reached somebody, but bulugh da'wat an-Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam wouldn't have reached them. But the later scholars have started to include this to make a distinction between certain things of people of fitrah and stuff like this, and to kind of make room for them, really. I suppose by extension, someone could also argue, as Ghazali had argued, that the da'wah being a correct and not mushawwah, not distorted da'wah that reaches them. But I think that's a bit almost like a bit of a PC, like a politically correct type of thing that they'd put in there. But it's not, the early scholars didn't generally used to, or the early generation didn't used to mention that, because it was implicit in, obviously, Islam having reached you. It couldn't have done so without you having learnt about the Prophet.
No, but couldn't it be some people have just heard of Islam but don't really know the message of it?
Yeah, but we're talking about the obligation of Salah.
But don't they mean that?
Yeah,
they mean that,
bulugh da'wat an-Nabi ila as-salah.
So there is
The da'watun Nabi ila Salah.
Ila as-salah. As in, okay, let's say they're Muslim.
Yeah.
But they don't know that they have to pray.
So we have this
No.
whole discussion about the ones who live outside Dar Islam and embrace Islam. Because in the old days they may have embraced Islam, but they never actually known about the obligation.
Of Salah.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose that's not a statement to necessarily be wrong. I mean, that could be the case. I don't think that is the case though, generally, because Salah was one of those things that many of the ulama go to the extent to say it was ma'lumun bil-darura. It was one of, although that can be questioned, but it's one of the things that almost anybody who knows of Islam knows, that Muslims pray. But maybe by extension, I mean, I'm sure that isn't necessarily like I'm not saying it's a wrong thing. I mean, if it fits it, it fits it. That's fine. But I don't think they meant by that when they say that, that they knew that the Prophet had instructed them to pray. Then it becomes obligatory upon them. I don't think it meant that, but I suppose by the wording, if you want to, my general understanding was when they said this, it was to include people of fitrah and stuff like this, and people to kind of like that the da'wah hadn't reached them, but they somehow kind of understood the general principles of Islam, like that there being one God and there being this type of stuff. And because there is a debate that do the obligations fall upon them, because the reason being that this is going a bit into Aqeedah now, but you have a split between, let's say, people like the Maturidis and the Ash'aris and other people as well. You have a split in the sense that is goodness and badness, or are good and bad, inherent properties. So is something which in philosophy they call the divine commandment theory, that, like, for example, X is good because God commanded it, or did God command it because it was good, because X is good? So, for example, telling the truth is only a good thing because God said tell the truth, or did God say tell the truth because telling the truth in itself was a good thing? So this is a philosophical debate known as the divine commandment theory, and generally most of the imams and most of the muhaddithin and most ash'aris and these people said that no, it's only good or bad based on what Allah has commanded. So for example, all the things which we understand to be good are only good because the Sharia said they were good. Otherwise, they wouldn't be good. So this is actually the popular mainstream view. The Maturidis and what was also Imam Abu Hanifa's view, many of the Hanafiya, also the Mu'tazila and other people believed that good and bad were inherent properties. So killing was bad because killing was bad, not just because God said killing was bad. So in that case, you see, what would happen is there is then a debate, a further split between these people, that okay, in that case, if you understood these inherent properties and Islam hadn't reached you, but because you understood that, yeah, there's one God, and you understood that killing was bad, so if you understood worshipping must be a right, obviously if God has created us, surely he must, we must be obliged to worship him. Are those actions which you've arrived at, because they're inherent properties, do they become obligatory upon you, and will you be sinful? So for example, the people of fitrah, will they be sinful then for those actions? This is an extended debate, which obviously the other people don't accept anyway, because they say good and bad only depend on what Allah has said. So my understanding was this: Bulugh Da'wat al-Nabi was always a refutation of that point, to say no, Salah still wasn't obligatory upon them because they hadn't still heard the message of the Prophet ﷺ. That was my general understanding. Okay, moving on. ثانيا شروط صحة الصلاة, the conditions of validity for Salah.
Deliberately don't mention the full waqt, because it should really be.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. Shukran for mentioning that. You see, he should have actually mentioned that. Dukhul waqt, I'm actually surprised he hasn't. No, I've not mentioned it. Oh, sorry. I'm surprised that Ashmawiya has forgotten to mention something like that. Right. No, thank you, Shukran, for reminding me that. By the way, if I skip something, it's just the wording of this. As you can see, the text I've got in front of me is so spaced out that as I move my finger down, sometimes and I look up and look back down, I've kind of skipped a line sometimes. So that dukhul waqt is an obligation. Is a condition for the salah becoming obligatory. But what is interesting, so what that means is that the entering of the time. So as dawns upon us, if you like, that is when Fajr begins. Once the sun has set, Maghrib begins. So the times of Salah have been attached, and what I like, people, is the way Imam Shatibi has explained this. Because Imam Shatibi says that these wujub la taqa'u biha, not with the entering of the time, bal inda dukhul al-waqt. Rather, they concur, okay, they coincide with the entering or the entrance of that time, with the entering of that particular time. Why is that important? What do you think, apart from just Shatibi being slick and me saying that I like the way he did that, why do you think that's important, him mentioning that?
Because other things can change now.
What things can change?
Other things in terms of the offer.
No, I mean, why this exact wording? So normally people say Salah becomes obligatory with or by the entering of the time of Salah, but not if we don't use the word by the entering of the time, but we say with the entering of the time. Why does that make this slightly more meaningful?
It's philosophically, they're not reading the aspect.
Not just philosophically, but that's a big point. That's a big deal. You see, what we are saying is that we're resorting to the hadith that inna Allah kataba alaykum khamsa salawatin fi kulli yawmin wa layla, that Allah has written or obliged or mandated for you 5 prayers in a day and night. Meaning that the salah were made obligatory by the hadith and the sunnah. They then kick in with each time. Why that is beneficial is that if the time is not even there for some abnormality, the obligation had already been stipulated by the hadith. Do you understand? So now we could then start saying, okay, let's estimate the time. Like in summer here or in other parts of the world. That is an important distinction, because what that means, because the question could be, and as I know some of the Hanafiya have debated this already, that they say, well, if the sabab, the cause of obligation isn't there, therefore the obligation isn't there. And many usuli, not just the Hanafiya, have debated that, but they popularly have debated it. So the point is that they will say, well, okay, hence we don't need to pray. Time for Isha hasn't come in this country, therefore we don't need to pray. Now, you see, because the question, the usuli question is, the usuli wants his things. He wants you to answer according, wants you to tick his boxes. Point is, where is the obligation initiated? Like, show us the command, the imperative to initiate the obligation. Like, an obligation has to be written up somewhere. Where is it? Because if it is written up with this time, then this time hasn't come in, therefore it isn't there. But if you understand that the obligation was written up in a different hadith, so it's already defined 5 salahs in a day. Now all you know is you have to pray 5. So if the cause, the trigger isn't there, you then create a trigger for it. Because you know the obligation still exists. Does that make sense?
So, can you kind of draw a comparison with the debate about if you're unable to fulfill the conditions, do you pray, is always prayer not obliged upon you, or do you pray qada?
What obligations are we talking about?
Because for example, there's some, I heard you say once that there are 4 positions on if you're unable to pray with the obligation. Say, for example, you can't find anything to cover yourself. Some people will say that you pray however you can, but then you have to make it up. And some people say yes, no.
That, I tell you what, we'll be coming slightly shortly just to 1-2 of these, and we'll cover it there, inshallah. Right, so that's a good question though. What if about when these are missing? So we know in time, for example, the dukhul waqt, we have to then estimate the time, but we don't just do away with the obligation. Does that make sense? Right, okay. And then we had bulugh da'wat al-nabi, which we've already covered, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. ثانيا شروط صحة الصلاة, the conditions for validity of salah. So we've had conditions for obligation, conditions for validity. Taharatul hadath, purity from ritual impurity. Hadath, there's a distinction between khabath and hadath. Okay, khabath being actual impurities, hadath being ritual impurities. Okay, so taharatul hadath, so a person is in a state of wudu, person is in a state of ghusl, not in a state of janaba, for example. So these things are considered ritual impurities, okay, we call them hadath. Secondly, taharatul khabath, actual impurities. If a person has actual impurities on him, they have to be removed. So a person couldn't have been, let's say he stepped on something he shouldn't have stepped on. So therefore, he would have to clean that before he could begin his or her prayer. Right, okay, now, istiqbalul qibla. Pointing, or the direction of the qibla, is a condition for validity of salah. Not for obligation, but for validity. If you prayed to a direction and you did not know it was qibla, but let's say you just prayed to a direction, and after you finish, somebody says to you, "Oh, qibla's that way," like in a complete opposite direction. It depends. Really, you should repeat your salah. The question there is an extended one: how obliged are you to repeat your salah? That's a different question, but generally you should just repeat your salah. The question would be is if you had kind of done your best in figuring out which way qibla was. Like, let's say you came in and the prayer mats were already set out this way, and in a particular, like there were certain things and certain pointers which you always, oh yeah, I'm sure, we prayed. And there's several ways, like for example, if a person doesn't know qibla, you can always use pointers like the sun. For example, you can always figure things out from where the sun is, where it sets in the west. Sorry?
Sky satellite dishes.
Okay, you can watch satellites and any preferable channels. Sky movies. Is that? What's that? Cable points towards qibla. Underground. So, okay, an alternative, you can watch PTV via satellite, and so they point towards southeast, do they, from here? The direction for us is southeast. Whatever way you want to figure it out, that's fine. Whether it's using satellite dishes, compass, the sun, stuff like this, whatever you want to do, you can use that and you can figure it out. But if you did nothing, if you just came in a room, like imagine I walked into this room and I had no idea which way qibla was. no direction. And I didn't even bother to ask. I didn't even bother to work it out. I didn't try and look for, like as suggested by Mamadou, didn't look for the satellite dish or didn't do anything. I just said, oh well, Salah time, all right, face the wall and let's just pray. So let's say I prayed and now somebody walks in and they tell me, oh, you just finished praying, yeah. They said, oh yeah, that was actually the Qibla. What do you think the ruling is? Allahu Akbar.
That was he prayed in the right direction.
Yeah.
Will be valid.
No, but you can enter the Salah with yaqeen.
Allahu Akbar. Ya Doctor, we have a faqih in the making. You see, knowledge is true justified belief, as Plato has kindly explained. Right, the thing is that if I said that, like let's say I said Abbas Musa over here is, somebody said he's a man. So I say he's a man, yeah, which is correct, yeah, now, which is totally correct. But if you said, a small pause there, but if I said to you he's a man and you said, oh yeah, that's spot on, and then you asked me, well, how did you know? I said, well, because that's obvious. Huh? It's obvious because his second name there, Musa, his second name Musa starts with M and the word man begins with M. Now that means that I don't actually have knowledge of what I just said, even though I got it correct. So not until a statement, you see, true, a statement is a belief which is true, meaning it correlates with reality, but you must be able to justify it for it to become knowledge. If I got it right, but I still don't know why I got it right. If I say, yeah, because they both start with M, therefore Musa and man, and therefore he's a man. That is not knowledge. That therefore is still incorrect, and hence the fuqaha say, if a person didn't even bother to figure out which way Qibla was, but randomly just prayed in a direction, finished his Salah, he did not enter that Salah upon yaqeen. He forfeited one of the conditions of that Salah, therefore his Salah is invalid. Even if he got it right. Wa in asab, they say. Faqad akhta.
The time as well.
The time?
But then you have to know that the time is it.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, you would have to, as opposed to, like, for example, it's 11 a.m. and I start praying Dhuhr, like that. Yeah, I mean, certainty is necessary. Although the reason with time, usually people have a reasonable idea with time. Like you would know that, for example, if it's 10 a.m., it definitely isn't Dhuhr. But with Qibla, it's a common issue. Like you could go into a room now, there's no way, so the point is, tahari is wajib. That means you try and figure it out.
But with ijtihad, it's okay.
But with ijtihad, it would have been... Now, had if the person tried, like imagine the person had tried and still got it wrong, then he should repeat it within time. But if the time has gone, then it's okay. Okay, and by the way, the Maliki are a lot more flexible on what constitutes the direction of the Qibla. So it's not just like a 45 degree off. Like a person could be almost up to complete 90 degrees off even, and still be okay. So imagine it was that way and you're pointing that way. It would still kind of be okay. They would still allow that. But they wouldn't allow like beyond, like if your point in that direction is in that direction. So they are more, and that's based on some of the athar and the hadith where they said what is between the west and the east, like that. And in that sense of being very liberal in the... So I know in the other madhabs there's almost like a 45 degree leeway, but in the Maliki you could almost say like a 90 degree. I'm not saying do that intentionally, but that it allows that. Naam. So istiqbal satrul awra. Satrul awra is a condition a person has covered. What is the awra? The awra is of two types. You do have awratul mughalladha and awratul mukhaffafa. Now Qadi Abdul Wahhab al-Baghdadi and these other ulama do go into that in a lot more detail. We will as well as we start covering the other texts. The point being, you have what they call a core aura and an extended aura. And where they make a difference is in terms of what if they were accidentally uncovered. So that's where the distinction would be made. So really the man's aura is between the navel and the knee, and the woman's aura is her entire body except the face and the hands. Okay, and some have said the feet as well. There's that difference. Now generally for the man, everything excluding the actual private parts in a sense would be his almost his extended aura. So what they say, the sawatan really. So that and so that's really the what they say in Arabic, the qubul and the dubul. They say it like that, the dubur. So you got these two things are the core aura. Everything else is extended. So his thigh is an extended aura. And some have argued whether it's from the aura, I know, but the point being that's the debate. For the woman, between her knee and navel, is the core aura, and everything else is the extended aura. So it does make a difference in terms of things being uncovered accidentally. So if a person was, so for example, a man praying, part of his aura is uncovered accidentally. So let's say he's wearing these long shorts and they uncover a bit of his thigh whilst he's praying. Now, if that happened, provided it gets covered again, he doesn't go through like the whole salah with it and stuff like this. Like let's say whilst he was getting up or whilst he's going to sujood, it kind of got a bit uncovered and then he puts it back, it's fine. And same with a woman, let's say she was praying and like a bit of her hijab came loose or something and she fixed it up, that wouldn't be a problem, it wouldn't invalidate the salah. Okay, so provided it doesn't go on throughout the whole salah, it's just something that accidentally happened and you kind of you apprehended the situation, you kind of fixed it.
No, for instance, popular ones that when people make ruku and then they're
is that popular nowadays? What?
most often,
Is that the in thing?
And you're praying behind them, that you just say like, if for the whole of salah, the top of the back is uncovered, the bottom of the below.
Okay.
You have to just like, is it okay still?
Are you sure it was through the whole salah?
Are you obliged to tell them, by the way,
Not while Salah.
Not salah.
During salah? Or try and fix it, you mean? For them? That would be a bit more intriguing. So, the thing is that I don't think that's generally the case. If that is the case during the entire salah, the person's aura is uncovered, then they would have to repeat their salah. What I've seen sometimes may happen in some cases is people where they're wearing like a t-shirt or something, when they go into sujood, sometimes you could see perhaps a part of what might reach their aura, if it's from the navel to the knee in the sense, it might become a bit uncovered, but as they kind of get up, the t-shirt usually falls back onto it. That happens. In that sense, the salah would still be valid, but they should kind of, if you can kind of point it out to them, maybe respectfully after they finished, just so they can kind of take heed for the following salah. But if that was to continue throughout the entire salah, I don't think that's usually the case, but if that was, then they would have to repeat their salah.
Every time you're going to sujood,
it would happen.
It would happen. So it happened at least 4 times.
Yeah, but if it's... Okay, it's an interesting. So Maghrib. So the thing is, but I think inshallah in that case, inshallah the salah would be okay, although it may be recommended for them to repeat it within time. Should you pray behind this person?
You're praying behind this person, do you have to make it up yourself?
No, I believe their salah would be inshallah valid, with those conditions that A, it was unknowingly, B, that it was something which wasn't for the majority of the salah. It was for a minor part of the salah. And C, it wasn't a core part of the aura that was exposed. Because you got to remember that there is and the whole aura, covering the aura within the Maliki madhab, because first of all, according to some of the Baghdadiyin like Qadi Ismail and these people, covering of the salah isn't an obligation of salah. It's actually a separate obligation to salah. Therefore, if according to that ruling, if a person was to have even prayed completely naked, their salah would be valid, although they may be sinful for that as a separate issue. So some ulama saw that as very different, and you'll see this, and we'll go in more detail and the ruling and stuff like this. So the salah would be valid, but maybe just as a reminder to say that to the person.
When you say dubar, do you mean ist or just the...
That would actually be the actual anus in that sense. So and the private parts are what is the core aura for a man. So, tarkul kalam, leaving speech. A person is not allowed to speak during salah, obviously. It would invalidate the salah. So it's an obligation of validity to make sure you've left speech and things like this. Tarkul af'alul kathira. I don't know why you have to say this, because it's from the conditions of salah that you're not allowed to do stuff like that. I suppose, so I can see why but I would have thought they might have mentioned them with the actual inner conditions of salah as opposed to the conditions of validity. But anyway, tarkul af'al kathira means leaving many actions. So you can't be busy doing things when you're in salah. You can't be moving about, flapping your hands and... Right, I'm not talking about Rafali Dain, by the way. That's right. I mean, you can't be kind of like moving, you can't be doing things, this and that. You've got to be focused about salah. Having said that, they are still more liberal than some of the other madhabs in how many movements invalidate salah. They don't have a set number. Like some say 3 consecutive movements invalidate the salah. Right, that's a bit weird. But anyway.
And if your phone rings in the salah, can you put on silent?
Yeah, that's a good question. If your phone rings, you should kind of like switch it off or cancel it, whatever, but you shouldn't just let it carry on ringing. Because it's distracting you if you're praying alone, and it's definitely distracting other people if you're praying with people. So some people think, oh no, I'm not allowed to touch it, so it just carries on ringing. It's probably got like a Bollywood tune on it, so everybody's just listening to that. So what they should do is take it out, not answer it like, hello, I'm in salah right now. I would tell you, but I'm in salah. So the thing is, what they can do is take it out and switch it off. Okay, don't let it ring, don't let it disturb people. If you want to put it on silent, put it on silent, but whatever, but just see to it, don't see to the call, see to kind of like resolving the situation.
This is talking kalam, leading speech. So if someone says salam alaikum to you in that, and then do you like respond to her?
Okay, the Malikiya do allow that, yes. Raddul salam bil ishara, as they say. That's within salah. When a person is praying, if somebody was to kind of come in and say, Assalamu alaikum, you don't have to, you're not obliged to respond because you're in salah, but you can, in the Maliki madhab, for example, just kind of you can kind of just indicate to the fact that you've acknowledged. Start pointing out, he 3. It's like Predator. All those. So you don't start getting carried away. But what you do, you can kind of just, I don't necessarily encourage that, because I think most people don't know it, so they'll find it weird anyway. If you kind of in your salah and you're pointing at the person, finding what's this person doing? So I think you're better off. They shouldn't be giving salam to you either if you are in salah. Naam, let's read on that.
باب فرائض الصلاة وسننها وفضائلها ومكروهاتها. فأما فرائض الصلاة ف13 النية وتكبيرة الإحرام والقيام لها وقراءة الفاتحة والقيام لها والركوع والرفع منه والسجود والرفع منه والجلوس من الجلسة الأخيرة بقدر السلام والسلام المعرف بالألف واللام والطمأنينة والاعتدال. وأما السنن الصلاة ف12 السورة بعد الفاتحة في الركعة الأولى والثانية.
شكرا. Okay, we're going through the arkan of salah. These are sometimes referred to as arkan of salah, sometimes fara'id of salah, sometimes wujub of salah, whatever. These are all synonymous terms. Although, there is a distinction. Some have defined a rukn to kind of be an obligation which is intrinsic to a thing, an intrinsic property, whereas a shart, a condition, is also an obligation, but it's extrinsic. So it's not actually. So as an example, if let's say facing the Qibla is external to your actual Salah. Yes, so it's not actually, although like your Salah is one thing, is your beginning to end from Takbir to Taslim, but it's done in the direction of Qibla. So you facing the Qibla is an external matter to your Salah. Whereas you reading Fatiha is intrinsically part of your Salah. So likewise here, the Hanafiya have debated whether Takbir, Abu Hanifa has the famous mas'ala, whether it's a rukn or a shart, because whether it's within or it's out the Salah to get you into the Salah. There's a debate, but generally they accept it, we accept it anyway, as part of the Salah, within the Salah. So the first of the 16 obligations is a niyyah. Sorry?
13.
It says فرائض الصلاة 16.
هنا 13.
Huh? You've got 13 there? Okay.
Actually, the judge mentioned it.
Okay, cool. I mean, here he's got, okay, it's just a variation. Maybe he split some of them up in this particular. He's got them as 16 here, but it's the same. You'll see it's the same type of thing anyway. Okay, begins with an-niyyah. إنما الأعمال بالنيات. An intention. It's absolutely necessary. You need to know your niyyah for salah. You don't need to get carried away. You don't need to be necessarily kind of reading a paragraph saying, and you don't need to be reading it in Urdu necessarily. Right? Most of us probably still do. No, the Malikiya are very. that's the way we were taught, right? So the Malikiya are very clear. You need to know what salah you're praying. So if in your mind you think, okay, Dhuhr, 4 rakat, that's in your mind, you just think that, yeah, so it's Dhuhr, 4 rakat, okay, Allahu Akbar, that's it. You don't say it. To say it would really be like a bid'ah, and so that's it really. Just keep it simple, keep it in your mind, that's all. Takbirat al-ihram, saying Allahu Akbar. At the beginning, Allahu Akbar, you can't go beyond that really. You can't say anything else, you can't change it, you can't variate it. Allahul Akbar, Allahu Kabir, La ilaha illallah. You can't say anything else. Allahu Akbar, that's it, okay. Al-Qiyam li Takbirat al-Ihram. You see, you're going to notice every obligation, the physical context in which it occurs is also an obligation. So saying Takbirat al-Ihram is an obligation, and therefore you say it while standing, therefore standing becomes an obligation. So the spatial capacity within which an obligation takes place also becomes an obligation, if that makes sense. So Ihram, Takbirat al-Ihram is an obligation. Standing for it will be an obligation because that's where it takes place. Qira'atul Fatiha is an obligation. Standing for Qira'atul Fatiha becomes an obligation. Ar-Ruku' is an obligation. Rafa' min ar-Ruku', rising from Ruku' is an obligation. As-Sujud, and that is Sajdatain, both are an obligation, by the way. Ar-Rafa' min as-Sujud, rising from sujood is an obligation. Al-julus min al-jilsat al-akhira biqadr as-salam. The sitting at the end, and you're going to really should have said this after saying salam, but because salam is an obligation, therefore sitting for that much time in which you could say salam is an obligation. Assalamu alaikum with the as-salam, not salamun, not without the alif lam. Salamun, not Assalamu alaikum, is an obligation. And that's really all the Malikiyah say. They don't say wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, although you can. Okay?
Is the alaikum also?
Alaikum is an obligation.
Okay, so you can't just say
You can't just say assalam. Were you just saying assalam? Salam. Salams, bro. So, text message. No. So, assalamu alaikum with the alif lam. You couldn't say alaikum assalam, meaning it's got to be the right order. Assalamu alaikum. And I know the other madhabs are a bit more flexible and stuff like that, but we just stick with what the hadith has said. Okay, very clear. Tuma'nina. Okay, now these things that we'll see now, I'm just wondering where I go out of sync with your numbering. Do let me know, okay? Because I'm so far in sync with your list. Okay. Tuma'nina, it means like tranquility. And what?
That's about the sitting. You only said the sitting.
Yeah.
You said that both sittings are obligatory.
Both sittings? No. No, I never said both sittings. I said sitting enough to say the length of time it takes you to say salam, or the sitting for the salam is an obligation.
So if you're paying like a 4 rakah, only the last sitting is obligatory.
And that too, the qadr salam, because any obligatory act, its spatial context becomes obligatory as well. So because the salam is an obligation, therefore its spatial capacity also becomes an obligation, which is done while sitting, therefore sitting becomes an obligation. Right, tuma'nina, tranquility. All this means is that you have carried out, this is similar to the one next to it, which comes after i'tidal. Tranquility just means that you've been in an act for enough time for it to have been perfectly offered, at the very least. So what I mean by that is, let's say I'm in ruku', so I'm in ruku' for at least a certain period of time in which a person could say, yeah, that was ruku'. You know, like I've been there, at least like I've taken a breath there. Like, I mean, it's not like
continuous movement.
So it's not continuous movement. There is a pause. There is a moment of tranquility which has been attained whilst you are in ruku', as an example. Okay, i'tidal is similar, except it means that when you are doing these acts, you do them in a way that they kind of lock out, and they've reached their, like they've kind of straightened out where they are and how they are, so that an act can, so basically it's like saying that an act is clearly definable. And I mean by an act, a position, a posture is clearly definable. So ruku' becomes clearly definable as ruku'. So not just a person going, just like dropping his shoulders, saying, I'm in ruku' now. That doesn't constitute. They must be in a clearly definable type of i'tidal, it must straighten out. Although it doesn't mean that if a person had his back slightly bent or something, that is the ruku' still valid. It is, because the posture is definable. Okay? Right. Niyatu salat al-mu'ayyana. Is this the extra one? It's the extra one. Okay, so yeah, because that doesn't really make sense. Like in the sense, that really comes in with niyyah. That just means that you define your salah clearly, which is like it's an obvious, when you're going to have intention for your salah, you're going to have intention for a specific salah. Niyatul iqtida, I take it that's not there. Is it there? Right. Niyatul iqtida is where you are following somebody. Once again, it doesn't really matter, it really comes into intention anyway. If you had intention that you're praying behind an imam, then that would be your intention that you're praying behind an imam. Tartibul ada, this, I take it's not there. Once again, it's common sense that the sequence of these obligations are an obligation. So you couldn't be doing like, I'm going to do ruku' before my sujood, and then I'm going to do julus and then qiyam. You can't mix the thing up. Okay, it doesn't work like that.
So is this in Ashmawiya or is it not?
Those things, those three that weren't there, I mean, he has got it in this one. Maybe in some prints it's not there, because sometimes when a text was written, it was obviously it turned into what are now found as manuscripts. And some manuscripts sometimes vary on little points, because a person may have thought, no, those were already included, therefore there's no point. Maybe that's my notes. And so sometimes you see people, the scribes that were writing, vary in their scripts. But that's no big deal. I mean, they were all implicitly included anyway. Naam. So, Sunan al-Salah.
Is there any khilaf in the madhab on final tashahhud being wajib?
Yeah, there is. I believe, I mean, we'll go through it at the time. If I recall correctly, I think it may be a view of Muhammad ibn Maslama. Is that what you're thinking? Ibn Maslama.
But it's not.
Alright, did I get that right? Look at that. So,
it's not wajib here in the mashhur.
No, it's not wajib. It's not wajib. No, it's not. We're just saying, did some person say it's wajib? We're not saying it's wajib. Right, okay. Sunan al-Salah. Shall we do the sunnah? I was thinking, unless we do Maghrib or something. Huh? Should we do Maghrib?
Yeah, we're running out.
And then shall we continue and just finish off a bit after that, after Maghrib? Yeah?
Past 9 o'clock then. We've got snacks.
But I'm thinking if we could read maybe a bit till 9, or how long have we been reading? How long have we been? Let me just see the yeah, I think we could.
We'll just continue now then until 9. Then we'll look at.
Yeah, okay, then go on. Let's do that. Go on, Sunan al-Salah.
وأما سنن الصلاة فاثنا عشرة السورة بعد الفاتحة في الركعة الأولى والثانية والقيام لها والسر فيما يسر فيه والجهر فيما يجهر فيه وكل تكبيرة سنة إلا تكبيرة الإحرام فإنها فرض كما تقدم وسمع الله لمن حمده للإمام والمنفرد والجلوس الأول والزائد على قدر السلام من الجلوس الثاني ورد المقتدي على إمامه السلامة وكذلك رده على من على يساره إن كان على يساره أحد والسترة للإمام والفذ إن خشي أن يمر أحد بين يديهما.
Okay, excellent. Right, okay, Sunan al-Salah 12. السورة بعد الفاتحة في الركعة الأولى والثانية. So saying a surah in the first 2 rak'ahs is from the sunnah of Salah. By the way, if it's not getting too hot in here, is it?
No.
No? Okay. So a surah in the first 2 rak'ahs is sunnah. Okay, not in the 3rd, 4th. Qiyam, and then once again we're seeing that same ruling. Whatever is the ruling of something, its spatial capacity takes the same ruling. So standing for that surah will then be sunnah. Since the surah is sunnah, therefore standing for it will be sunnah. As-sirru fima yusarru fi. Okay, the salahs which are read silently or inaudibly is a better word. Right, the inaudibility, like reading something silently or reading something aloud or audible in a audible salah, which the Arabic word for these are sirri, silent, or jahri. Okay, so just to kind of clarify that to you guys, so that will be a sunnah. So to do that so the prayers of the night are read audibly, and therefore the audibility in them will be sunnah. The prayers of the day are read inaudibly, right, and therefore to be silent in them will be a sunnah. Okay, just to clarify that. Moving on. كل تكبيرة سنة إلا تكبيرة الإحرام. تكبيرة الإحرام is obviously fard, as we've said, saying Allahu Akbar in the beginning. Every other takbirah is sunnah. Now there is a distinction here. And the fuqaha have disagreed over, do you mean every other takbir put together is one sunnah, or do you mean every other takbir in itself is sunnah? We will see as we start going through more details, and you'll see many of what, once again, the Baghdadis and others had kind of said, and which kind of makes sense to me as well, that all the other takbirs put together is a sunnah, one sunnah. So it's not really each takbir on its own being a sunnah. Because the sunnah is actually quite strong in the Maliki madhab. So it's a strong thing really, and you'll see just one Allahu Akbar on its own doesn't quite meet that, like, that doesn't sound very good, does it? One takbir within salah on its own doesn't meet that category of strength. That's better. Reword, one Allahu Akbar doesn't sound astaghfirullah. Right, so for qawl sami Allahu liman hamida, for the imam and the munfarid, the person prays on his own and the imam, sami Allahu liman hamida is sunnah for them. That's because the person praying behind the imam doesn't say Sami Allah, say Rabbana wa lakal hamd. Right, al-julus al-awwal, the first sitting. Al-za'id ala qadri salam min al-julus al-thani, whatever is extra or in addition to the assalamu alaikum when it comes to sitting will be a sunnah. Okay, so that part is a sunnah, that part is a fard, and whatever's above it will be a sunnah. Ar-raddu al-muqtadi ala imamihi salam. So if a person is praying behind an imam, so where he says assalamu alaikum, the imam says one, the muqtadi will say his one, then he will return it, like his second alaikum. Now this is I don't know, you see, I don't encourage too much what some of the Malikiya have suggested. They have suggested that they almost make it into three. In my understanding, when you return praying behind the Imam, that is the second salam. So it's Salamu Alaikum, then it's Salamu Alaikum, and that one includes the person on your left and it includes the Imam. Some of the Malikiya have encouraged like saying Assalamu Alaikum and saying Assalamu Alaikum, Assalamu Alaikum, like turning it into three. I don't encourage that one personally. I kind of discourage. I don't really like it. Not just a personal like thing. What's interesting, Qadi Abu Bakr ibn Arabi really has a go at it as well, and he kind of tears it to pieces, saying how it's a bid'ah and this and that, and you know, these people who do this, I don't know where they got it from, and so on and so forth. So, but the point is, I do kind of agree with him in the sense that we should stick to like the one. Or if you're going to do the two, as Ibn Abdul Barr and other ulama have said, you can do the two, like you can return the salam to the other person. You should return the salam to the other person praying on the left to you. But that is it then, and that includes the imam. So it says, Assalamu alaikum, and that includes your Assalamu alaikum to the imam. Right. As-sutra, Raddul muqtadi ala man yasarihi as-salam. So here it's saying, Ashmawi is counting that as a separate salam. Like, so you can see he's probably under the impression of the three. Doing the three. Like if you're behind an imam. 1, 2, 3. Which personally I do think is a bit weird. Alright, so I'm not just saying that. I mean, when you look at a lot of the early texts of the Malikiya, the fuqaha had spoken out about that as well. I mean, it's really, we can see it as an interpretation, but I don't think it's from, and really the clear hadith do demonstrate 1 or 2. That's it really. So just sticking to that is safe. As-sutra lil imam wal fadh, you place a sutra if you have that fear. Okay, anything which can demonstrate that you're praying and somebody can walk in front of it. Okay. Na'am. Fadail as-salah.
Can I ask a quick question? So the tashahhud for the salawat aren't sunnah?
Tashahhud?
Or the salat al-nabi? Because I think Akhtari puts it as sunnah.
Yeah, I mean, what you will find here, guys, this is a good point actually, Doc. What you're going to find, he's also kind of put it as, I believe, as a sunnah, hasn't he? This is also, no, I mean, he's put it as a fada'il, hasn't he? Or, yeah, he's put it as a fada'il. But the thing is, he also does mention, what I was going to say is you will find that there will be a bit of, because we're going to do other texts after this, there will be a bit of a mix-up at times between what falls in what part of the category of sunnah and mandub.
Doesn't he say it's sunnah, but just he ordered it?
He's ordered it. He does say it's sunnah as well, but you will find this anyway. You will find this. So, for example, the best way to explain this really quickly is that anything that the Prophet ﷺ had, like you see, everything falls into nafal. Okay, the whole thing is nafal in a black and white world. So then anything the Prophet ﷺ just, for it to really fall into this category, the Prophet ﷺ had legislated it, that it is legislated. So the Prophet ﷺ says, okay, whosoever does this, or he legislates it generally, generic legislation, like you should pray nafal. That's it, nafal has been legislated now. A limit hasn't been defined, but nafal has been legislated. Prophet ﷺ encouraged people, people should pray nafal as much as you can, it helps you. The Prophet ﷺ said that many times, he told them, Aini bi kathrati sujud. Tells the person, help me by doing a lot of sujud. Unlimited nafal. Nafal now enters the realm, it is within this, it is now legislated. So, you will have now, there will be those things which are just legislated are all here. Then there are those things which the Prophet ﷺ defined. So he said, whosoever prays 2 rak'ah before or when he enters a masjid, this is now defined. There's definition to it, okay? This is still within that realm, it's a bit further up. This has now entered what we would call, you see, we would call this actually like fadila, recommended, like, but what other people may call sunnah ghair mu'akkada, the other madhabs. So we would call this a virtuous act. It's been taught and legislated and defined by who? The Prophet ﷺ. Then, how does it, and even if it may be that the Prophet ﷺ has done this as well, it may be that he just encouraged it, It may be that he actually performed it. Maybe he encouraged it but didn't perform it. He just encouraged people to do it. It may be that he did it as a one-off, or he did it now and then, but he didn't consistently do it. This all falls under virtuous. This is fadila. Some people call it raghiba. Some people call it mustahab. Some people call it mandub. Whatever you want to call it. Then there are those acts. Once again, they go along the spectrum a bit more. These were ones which the Prophet ﷺ either highly encouraged, and then he himself practiced and was consistent with practicing. And according to some ulama, also did them in jama'ah. And you'll see that later on. These are what are categorized as sunnahs. But you can leave the jama'ah thing out, but what the Prophet ﷺ not only highly emphasized, he did the others, but he highly emphasized this, and he consistently did this. It comes as a sunnah.
So is this really sunnah mustabirra?
Sunnah?
Mustabirra is continued.
I'm not sure if they, I mean, I suppose it may. Usually they use the word like muwadhaba. They say that the Prophet muwadhaba alayhi. But the Malikiya will say sometimes, some of them have said ma wadhaba alayhi, and some have said ma adharahu fil jama'ah. That he kind of, and we'll speak about this distinction between the students of Imam Malik as we go on. Right, but this is a point. So you will find some things, although the ulama agree it's in this category, but then they disagree sometimes where to place it. So you will find this, although not necessarily in the show, but I'm just saying in other things as well. So don't be too alarmed when you see this type of stuff.
And the fard has to have some kind of evidence of obligation.
The fard will be, it will be obliged by its wording. It would be a command. It would also be not just a command. Usually it would have either some association of punishment by having left it associated with it, or stuff like this. So it would be kind of clear in the sense that it's an and sometimes it's not clear, hence the debate surrounding those type of things. And there are many other things as well, but which we don't really need to go into, because there's interesting things like some, I think Ibn al-Muntab from the Iraqi Maliki about, I think there was some, a few others actually, Maliki about the Iraqis, that anything that Allah commanded was an obligation, and any imperative from the Prophet was always a sunnah or below. But I mean, that's not necessarily how the usuliyin go, but that's some which inshallah at a later date we can cover. Right, okay, so we've got to fadail. We have got to fadail, yeah? So, okay, رفع اليدين عند تكبيرة الإحرام. The actual takbirat al-ihram, we've said, is an obligation. So saying Allahu Akbar is an obligation, but the raising of the hands is just a virtuous act. It's not a sunnah. The reason the sunnahs in salah are those for if you miss out, you must do sujood al-sahw. Okay, if you miss out a virtuous act, there is no sujood al-sahw. Right, تطويل قراءة الصبح والظهر. Right, reading, elongating the recitation of subh wa dhuhr is a virtuous act. Have you read it?
I haven't read it.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
I got up to it.
Okay. Oh,
Read it.
yeah, go for it.
وأما فضائل الصلاة فعشرة رفع اليدين عند تكبيرة الإحرام
Okay.
وتطويل قراءة الصبح والظهر وتقصير قراءة العصر والمغرب.
Okay. So shortening the recitation of Asr and Maghrib as opposed to elongating it. So the first two being longer and this being shorter. نعم.
وتوسط العشاء.
توسط القراءة.
لا هنا توسط العشاء.
Okay, I suppose he's kind of same thing. توسط القراءة في صلاة العشاء, and having Isha as a medium type of recitation. نعم.
وقول ربنا ولك الحمد للمقتدي والفرد.
Okay, so saying that ربنا ولك الحمد is recommended. Okay, for the muqtadi and for the fard, and some of the ulama have said for the imam as well. So if the imam did say, it's not a problem. Okay. Now.
والتصبيح في الركوع والسجود.
So saying whether it's Subhan Rabbiyal A'la or any other tasbih, and the Malikiya once again don't like to restrict things. They don't like to get absolutely pernickety on wording. So you'll see that sometimes you might be surprised to read Imam Malik when he was told about, somebody said Subhan Rabbiyal A'la and this in sujood, and he told him off severely. They said, what's this nonsense? I mean, like, but people say, but isn't that proven from hadith and so on? But the point is, because you will find this, that he says, وَأَنْكَرَ وَإِنْكَارًا شَدِيدًا and so on. But what Imam Malik is doing inkar of quite often is the limiting things to this type of wording. So you keep things natural. You can do that tasbih, but you know you can do it at tasbihat as well. Now,
والتأمين الفردي والمأموم مطلقا وتأمين الإمام في السر فقط.
Okay, so saying the imam or the person praying on his own saying Ameen, and no, sorry, he's worded them as separate. But it's the same thing anyway. But he said that ta'min al-fadhi wal ma'mum. So the person praying on his own and the person praying behind the imam to say Ameen at all times. But then he said the imam to say sirran, to say silently. This generally in the Maliki madhab, the Ameen is said silently anyway, whether it's the muqtadi, whether it's the person praying behind the imam or whatever, they do usually say it silently, although there are some opinions. We'll come to that later on inshallah. But so saying Ameen now.
But does it say here وَتَأْمِينُ الْإِمَامِ فِي السِّرِّ فَقط, i.e. he only says Ameen in the quiet prayers? So if he's reciting aloud, he doesn't say Ameen
you see,
at all?
It can mean like that, because here they've got it as ta'minul imami sirran,
okay,
right, which would mean slightly differently. But that is also a qawl. There is a statement that does the imam say Ameen at all, in like where he's kind of like reading aloud, because we know he doesn't say it when he's reading aloud. So we know he's going to say wala-dhalin, and then he's going to start a surah, so he's reading audibly, but we don't hear his Ameen. So does that mean the imam should leave out Ameen altogether? But generally the imam, because the hadith says man wafaqa ta'minuhu ta'min al-imam faqad ghafara Allahu lahu ma taqaddama min, and so on. So the whole thing about whosoever his Ameen matches the Ameen of the imam, and therefore we understand from that the imam does say Ameen. But yes, some Malikiya have interpreted that to say, oh, so he can say in the silent prayers, but he doesn't say in the audible prayers. But really that is an opinion, but I don't necessarily think that kind of really falls in line with what the hadith is saying. Na'am.
والقنوت هو وهو اللهم إنا نستعينك.
This is qunut, yeah.
ونستغفرك ونؤمن بك ونتوكل عليك ونثني عليك الخير كله ونشكرك ولا نكفرك ونخلع لك ونترك من يكفرك. اللهم إياك نعبد ولك نصلي ونسجد وإليك نسعى ونحفظ ونرجو رحمتك ونخاف عذابك الجد إن عذابك بالكافرين ملحق.
Okay, so this is the wording of Qunut. Qunut is recommended in Salah. It's recommended in the Maliki madhab in Subh only. It is not a sunnah, it is a fadila. If a person leaves it out, he doesn't have to do sujood sahw. It is not done in witr. If it is done in the second rak'ah of Subh. And here is a wording. There are two different types of Qunut, both are valid. This one is preferred, which is similar to the Hanafi madhab, but it's not necessary. You could do the other one as well, which is a popular one, also found. You hear it quite often really. But this one, Allahumma inna nasta'inuka, Allah, we seek help from you, wa nastaghfiruk, and we seek forgiveness, wa nu'minu bik, and we believe in you, natawakkal alayk, and we trust upon you, wa nuthni alayka al-khair kulla, and we praise all good to you, nashkuruk, we are grateful, wa la nakfuruk, and we do not disbelieve in you, وَنَخْنَعُ لَكَ, and we are subservient to you, وَنَخْلَعُ وَنَتْرُكُ مَنْ يَكْفُرُكَ, and we remove ourselves and dissociate with those who disbelieve in you. Allahumma iyyaka na'bud, O Allah, you alone do we worship, وَلَكَ نُصَلِّي, and to you do we pray, وَنَسْجُدْ, and we prostrate, وَإِلَيْكَ نَسْعَى, and to you do we strive, وَنَحْفِدْ, and we are sincere, وَنَرْجُو رَحْمَتَكَ, and we hope for your mercy, وَنَخَافُ عَذَابَكَ الْجِدْ, and we fear your serious punishment, إِنَّ عَذَابَكَ بِالْكَافِرِينَ وَبِالْكُفَّارِ مُلْحِقْ, that indeed your punishment will reach or will kind of apprehend those who disbelieve. And then he mentions al-qunut. Did you read that? No, okay.
والقنوت لا يكون إلا في الصبح خاصة.
Okay, so qunut, as I said, is only in Salatul Subh.
ويكون قبل الركوع وهو السر.
And he says this before ruku', although Ibn Abi Zayd in the Risala and the Maliki Madhab generally states that it can be before or after ruku'. It doesn't have to be just before ruku', okay? But one of the wisdom some of the ulama say by doing it before ruku' is that if it's in, obviously it's in jama'ah, I mean if it is in jama'ah, that is, it allows people to still catch up with the salah and so on. But it can be done before or after, as Ibn Abi Zayd says, كُلُّ ذَلِكَ وَاسِعٌ, or that's all permissible. Sir, it's silently done. There are some opinions that it can be done aloud, but generally in the Maliki Madhab it's done silently. Naam.
حانت الساعة التاسعة.
Yeah, okay, we'll finish this though. There's the tashahhud.
والتشهد سنة ولفظه التحيات.
Okay, so he's just coming with tashahhud, which he's put here at the end, but he has once like kind of quickly put in there the word sunnah to clarify that it is sunnah. But I did say as well, don't be surprised sometimes as we go through the other texts that you'll find that this scholar has put this one thing in this category and the other one's put it in that category. It's just based on interpretation, that's all. نعم.
التحيات لله الزاكيات لله الطيبات الصلوات لله السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Okay, tashahhud, at-tahiyyat, you will find that there are several transmissions and narrations of at-tashahhud. They are all valid. So you will find this transmission is the one from narrated by Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu an. The one that the Hanafi madhab have is transmitted by Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu an. The one that the Shafi'i madhab use is the one transmitted by Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu an. You will find that they are all valid. And when Imam Malik was asked about the tashahhud, he said that they are all fine and they're all good. Illa, he said that that it has reached me that Umar radiallahu an taught this one from the mimbar, walam yunkir alayhi ahad, and nobody kind of like reprimanded him or kind of had a word with him for teaching it. Therefore, he said, I prefer this, because Umar radiallahu an taught it from the mimbar to the Sahaba. Therefore, the Maliki madhab tends to have this, the Medinan school has this. It doesn't attack or criticize any of the other tashahhudats that are available, okay? They're all valid. The wording is only slightly different, az-zakiyatu lillah, as you can see, and stuff like this. But it's not difficult, and you'll get hold of the wording very soon, inshallah. Now, did you read? فإن سلمت بعد هذا أجزأك.
What they say is that if you do salam on this, right, after having read that, that is actually your salah would have been valid. But it's saying that then now.
وإن شئت قلت وأشهد أن الذي جاء به محمد حق وأن الجنة حق وأن النار حق وأن الصراط حق وأن الساعة آتية لا ريب فيها وأن الله يبعث من في القبور اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وارحم محمدا وآل محمد وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت ورحمت وباركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد.
Right, okay. You will see that the Malikiyya will not have, they won't, you know, where you say as-salatu was-salam, salatu was-salam upon the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is included as the tashahhud. They don't call this usually by another name. Sometimes they might, but quite often it will be included within. Like when they say tashahhud, that's what follows on with tashahhud. I know in Urdu quite commonly they will just say darood, but they don't, like in Arabic, in Arabic generally it's called salatu was-salam or salatu was-taslim, but the thing is here, within the salah context, they usually include it as tashahhud. The Malikiyya do anyway, quite often, meaning it's not a core part of the tashahhud, but it's part of the dua which comes after. You can read any, whether it's Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim. Whether you want to say a different one, whether you want to say that one, whether you want, it's all valid, it's all perfectly fine. You can, after that, he's mentioned here a statement like this is in the Risala of Ibn Abi Zayd, أن الجنة حق وأن النار حق and he doesn't finish it here, but it's in your text and it's in the Risala and other books. You don't have to stick to that statement or that dua. You can make your own. You can say your dua in actually any language if you don't know Arabic. Okay, so it's not restricted to Arabic. Just as when you're in sujood, you can make dua in whether it's English or Urdu or anything. So it is flexible, and you say that salatu was salam. You should say, you know, like you should send some type of blessing upon the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, although it's not an obligation within the Maliki madhab, yet there have been some that did consider it an obligation, but generally it isn't. Okay, with that we've come to the end of the virtuous acts, which will bring us up to the makruhat, I believe. Yep, it brings us up to the makruhat. Then we've got the mandu, the salahs which are manduba, and then the mufsidat, that which kind of invalidates the prayer. Inshallah, we've got after that, I think, sujood sahu, and then the rules of some quick rules on the imam and those who follow, and then salatul jum'ah. It's quite a bit, but I think if we can, we'll try and maybe knock all of that out next session, inshallah. And with that, we should have, if I'm correct, let me just see. Oh, the salatul Eidain, and okay, let's see if we can. Well, if we can, then that will just leave us really with. Oh, there is quite a bit actually. We might not be able to do all of it actually, no, because there's quite a few other sunan and then janaza. So we'll split it after that Ramadan, because Ramadan isn't actually, the Psalm isn't too lengthy in this book at all. But inshallah, do revise that for next session. Inshallah, jazakumullah khair.